Have you ever wondered why it always feels like the wrong people are winning? The mediocre get promoted. The conformists get celebrated. The loud, confident idiots seem to thrive, while the thoughtful, competent individuals struggle in silence. Look around you. In your workplace, in politics, in your social circles, the pattern is everywhere. The person who thinks deeply gets ignored. The person who repeats what everyone else says gets applause. The individual who dares to think differently gets labeled problematic, difficult, or worse. But here's what's truly disturbing. What if this isn't a bug in the system? What if it's a feature? What if stupidity isn't winning by accident, but by design? What if mediocrity is actually the most effective survival strategy, and excellence is systematically punished? Over 140 years ago, Friedrich Nietzsche discovered something that would get him labeled insane, ostracized by society, and eventually forgotten until after his death. He identified a force so powerful, so totalizing, that it shapes everything from your career to your relationships to the thoughts you're allowed to think. He called it the herd. And today, we're going to explore why the herd always wins, why exceptional individuals always lose, and what this reveals about the society you're living in right now. Because once you see this pattern, you can't unsee it. And that might be the most dangerous knowledge of all.
Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a meeting where you had a genuinely good idea, thoroughly researched, carefully thought through, only to watch it get shot down? And then 10 minutes later, someone else proposes something obviously flawed, wrapped in confident language and buzzwords, and everyone nods in agreement? Or maybe you've watched someone in your field who does mediocre work, but promotes themselves constantly, rise faster than colleagues who are genuinely skilled, but quietly competent? You might have told yourself it's just bad luck, or poor management, or that the world is unfair. But Nietzsche would tell you something different. You're witnessing the fundamental operating system of human society. And that system is designed to crush exactly the kind of person you might be. This isn't new. Throughout history, we see the same pattern repeating with terrifying consistency. Socrates, arguably the wisest man in Athens, was sentenced to death by a democratic vote. His crime? Making people uncomfortable by asking too many questions. The herd couldn't tolerate someone who exposed the limits of their knowledge. Galileo was forced to recant his scientifically accurate observations because they contradicted what everyone else believed. The herd demanded conformity over truth. In more recent times, look at Alan Turing, who cracked the Nazi Enigma code and potentially saved millions of lives. He was prosecuted for being different. The herd he saved destroyed him for not conforming. Notice the pattern? It's not that these individuals failed, it's that their excellence made them targets. As Nietzsche observed in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, "More dangerous have I found it among men than among animals." The herd is more ruthless than any predator because it operates under the guise of morality and collective good. So here's the question that should terrify you. Is intelligence actually a liability? Research from the Journal of Management found that IQ correlates positively with leadership effectiveness only up to about 120. Beyond that point, additional intelligence actually becomes a hindrance to gaining leadership positions. Think about what that means. Being too smart makes you less likely to lead. Why? Because exceptional intelligence means you see complexity where others see simplicity. You acknowledge limitations where others make sweeping promises. You question yourself where others project absolute confidence. And in a world run by the herd, those are fatal flaws. Friedrich Nietzsche lived most of his productive life in isolation, plagued by illness, misunderstood by his contemporaries, and ultimately driven to mental collapse.
He died having influenced almost no one during his lifetime. Why? Because he dared to speak the truth about the herd. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche wrote, "No shepherd and one herd. Everyone wanteth the same. Everyone is equal. He who hath other sentiments goeth voluntarily into the madhouse." Read that again. He who has different feelings goes voluntarily to the madhouse. Nietzsche wasn't being poetic. He was describing the psychological mechanism by which society enforces conformity. If you think differently, you'll be made to feel crazy. And eventually, to avoid that pain, you'll police yourself. You'll voluntarily enter the madhouse of collective thinking. Nietzsche identified two fundamental types of human existence. The herd, the vast majority of humanity, lives by group instincts. They seek safety in numbers, define good as what the group approves, and cannot tolerate difference or excellence. They derive power only through collective action, because individually they are weak. The herd doesn't think, it reacts. It doesn't create, it consumes. And most importantly, it cannot tolerate competing value systems. The individual, the rare person capable of creating their own values, stands alone. They tolerate uncertainty, embrace difficult truths, and refuse to derive their worth from group approval. As Zarathustra declares, "The Creator seeketh companions, not corpses, and not herds or believers either." Now, ask yourself honestly, which one are you? And more importantly, which one is your society rewarding? But here's where Nietzsche's insight becomes truly disturbing. The herd didn't just win through numbers, they won through moral warfare. Nietzsche called this slave morality, and it's the most intelligent revenge the weak ever devised. Here's how it works. If you're weak and cannot compete with the strong, you don't admit defeat. Instead, you invert all values. You declare that strength is actually evil, that independence is arrogance, that excellence is elitism, that suffering is virtue. You transform your weakness into moral superiority. This is what Nietzsche meant when he described slave morality as sour grapes made into a value system. The weak couldn't reach the grapes, so they declared the grapes evil and their own position virtuous. And incredibly, this strategy worked. Weakness conquered strength. Slave conquered master. Not through force, but through moral persuasion disguised as compassion. Let me break down exactly how the herd always wins. First, numerical superiority. The exceptional will always be outnumbered. The herd can band together for communal feeling of power, the only type of power available to the individually weak. When you stand alone, no matter how right you are, the herd can overwhelm you through sheer numbers. Think about the last time you were right about something, but everyone around you disagreed. How long did you hold out before the pressure to conform became unbearable? That's the herd's first weapon, exhaustion through numbers. Second, moral warfare. The herd makes you feel guilty for being different. Your strength becomes your shame. Your independence becomes selfishness. Your authenticity becomes arrogance. Under the pretense of equality, they bring everyone down to the mediocre level. And they do it while claiming moral superiority. This is the most intelligent form of control ever devised, making the strong willingly weaken themselves. Studies in conformity, like Solomon Asch's experiments, showed that 75% of people will go along with an obviously wrong answer when surrounded by a group giving that same answer. That's the herd's moral pressure in action. Third, institutional capture. Over time, the herd doesn't just influence individuals, it captures entire institutions. Democratic movements, corporate HR departments, educational systems, social media platforms, all become mechanisms for enforcing herd values. Look at modern corporate culture. You're told to be yourself, but only within acceptable parameters. Innovation is celebrated, but only if it doesn't threaten existing power structures.
Diversity is championed, but only diversity of surface characteristics, never diversity of thought. Fourth, psychological comfort. Let's be honest, belonging feels better than isolation. Thinking independently is uncomfortable. Echoing what everyone else says is easy. The herd offers something seductive, the relief from the burden of individual responsibility. You never have to question whether you're right if you're doing what everyone else is doing. You never have to face uncertainty if you accept the group's certainties. As Nietzsche observed, most people will choose comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths. The herd always wins because comfort always wins. Fifth, self-replication. Here's the most insidious mechanism. The herd reproduces itself. It represses gifted individuals until they join the herd or are destroyed. It makes independent thought seem like arrogance or madness. Remember Nietzsche's observation? He who hath other sentiments goeth voluntarily into the madhouse. The herd doesn't need to physically imprison you. It creates a psychological prison where you police yourself. Have you ever stopped yourself from expressing an opinion because you knew it would make you a target? That's self-replication in action. The herd is inside your head now. If Nietzsche thought the herd was powerful in the 19th century, imagine what he'd think of our world today. We've built the most sophisticated herd enforcement mechanisms in human history. Social media isn't just a tool for connection, it's a herd optimization system. Every like conditions you to seek approval. Every algorithm feeds you more of what you already believe, creating echo chambers that make independent thought nearly impossible. Research from MIT found that false information spreads 6 times faster than true information on social platforms. Why? Because false information often feels more emotionally satisfying than complex truths. The herd doesn't want truth, it wants validation. And the algorithms know this. They're designed to give the herd exactly what it wants: comfortable lies wrapped in moral certainty. Cancel culture isn't new. It's just a digital version of what's always happened when someone steps outside herd boundaries. Socrates was canceled. Galileo was canceled. Turing was canceled. The mechanism is identical, only the technology has changed. Someone expresses a thought outside acceptable boundaries. The herd mobilizes, not to debate or discuss, but to destroy, because the herd can't tolerate different sentiments. Remember, he who hath other sentiments goeth voluntarily into the madhouse. The modern twist? Now the herd calls this accountability and social justice. They've moralized their enforcement mechanism, making it seem not just acceptable, but virtuous. That's slave morality perfected. Walk into any modern corporation and you'll see Nietzsche's nightmare manifest in fluorescent-lit conference rooms. Research shows that 95% of managers believe they perform in the top 50% of their peer group, a statistical impossibility. But here's what's more revealing. The managers who are most confident aren't the most competent, they're just the best at performing competence. Studies in organizational psychology found that narcissistic individuals are 35% more likely to be selected as group leaders. Why? Because they project the certainty the herd craves, even when that certainty is completely unfounded. The truly competent individual who acknowledges complexity and uncertainty, they get labeled as not leadership material. Translation? They're not enough like the herd. Modern politics isn't the marketplace of ideas. It's competing herds trying to dominate each other. Notice how political discourse has devolved into team sports? You're not evaluated on the quality of your reasoning, but on which herd you belong to. Say the right tribal signals and you're celebrated regardless of accuracy. Question your tribe's orthodoxy and you're expelled. A Yale study found that when people were presented with mathematically complex policy problems, their ability to correctly interpret the data was directly affected by whether the results aligned with their political beliefs. Even mathematically skilled participants used their intelligence not to reach correct answers, but to justify their preferred conclusions. That's herd thinking at the highest level. intelligence weaponized to serve tribal loyalty rather than truth. Perhaps the most insidious modern development is how we've pathologized healthy struggle. Nietzsche understood that growth requires difficulty, that becoming who you are demands walking difficult paths alone. But modern therapeutic culture has declared all discomfort a disease requiring treatment. Feeling different? That's anxiety. Questioning your beliefs? That's doubt. Refusing to conform? That's antisocial. We've medicalized independence and prescribed conformity as the cure. The herd has learned to use mental health language to enforce its values. You're not thinking independently, you're having intrusive thoughts that need to be corrected. This is Nietzsche's madhouse made medical, voluntary entry disguised as treatment. Here's what we need to understand. When the herd wins, everyone loses, even the herd itself. Nietzsche recognized a paradox. The herd needs exceptional individuals to create the new ideas, art, technologies, and insights that move civilization forward. But the herd also cannot tolerate the very people who provide these breakthroughs. It's like a body attacking its own immune system. The herd destroys the very thing that could save it from stagnation. What does a society look like when the herd has completely won? Nietzsche called it the last man, comfortable, risk-averse, equality-obsessed, where nothing great is possible. Look around. Does that sound familiar? We live in an age where participation trophies are given to avoid hurt feelings, where grades are inflated to protect self-esteem, where every opinion is treated as equally valid, regardless of expertise, where comfort is the highest value and struggle is pathologized. This is the society the herd creates: safe, equal, mediocre, and slowly dying. So if you felt isolated, if you felt like you don't quite fit, if you've noticed that thinking carefully makes you unpopular, understand what's happening. It's not that you're broken, it's that you're refusing to join the herd. As Alan Watts observed in his lectures on The Chosen Man, when a man starts to wake up, he naturally pulls away from the crowd, not because he hates people, but because the usual way of connecting stops making sense. You see the performance in everyday interaction, the need to be liked, to belong, to say the right thing, and once you see it, you can't participate in it anymore. From the outside, this looks like isolation. From the inside, it's clarity. The herd will interpret your independence as arrogance, your silence as judgment, your detachment as disinterest, but you're none of those things. You've simply stopped performing. And that disrupts everything, because most relationships aren't based on truth, they're based on mutual agreement to keep certain illusions intact. Nietzsche didn't write for the masses. He wrote for the individuals capable of hearing him. Not to the people is Zarathustra to speak, but to companions. His message wasn't about defeating the herd. You can't. They will always outnumber you. They will always have institutional power. They will always offer the seductive comforts of belonging. His message was about something more fundamental, becoming who you actually are, despite the herd's pressure to become like everyone else. This doesn't mean becoming a hermit. It means developing what Watts called comfortable solitude, the ability to be at peace with your own presence, to not need others to affirm your place in the world. You are not a problem to be solved. You are an event of the cosmos, as Watts put it. The herd will try to make you feel deficient, broken, in need of fixing. But the truth is simpler. You are just like that, and that is enough.
So, what do you do with this knowledge? First, stop expecting the system to reward merit. It won't. It's designed to reward conformity. Understanding this isn't cynical, it's liberating. You stop wasting energy on resentment and start making strategic decisions. Second, Cultivate intellectual humility while maintaining intellectual independence. Be willing to be wrong, but on your own terms. Question everything, including yourself. The herd demands certainty. You offer careful thinking. Third, choose quality over quantity in relationships. The herd offers constant connection built on pretense. You offer rare but genuine companionship built on mutual recognition. As Zarathustra said, the Creator seeketh companions, not corpses, and not herds or believers either. Fourth, develop tolerance for discomfort. The herd wins because it makes independence uncomfortable. Train yourself to sit with that discomfort without needing it to end. That's where your power lies. Finally, understand that this is the price of authenticity. The herd always wins in the material sense, but they lose in the only sense that ultimately matters. They never become who they actually are. You have a choice: comfortable falseness or uncomfortable truth, the herd or yourself. Most people choose comfort. That's why the herd always wins. But every once in a while, someone chooses differently.